Forget everything you thought you knew about rookie seasons. Forget the learning curves, the adjustment periods, the "she's got potential" conversations. What Caitlin Clark is doing right now isn't a development story, it's a hostile takeover. And the people who built this league from the ground up are absolutely losing their minds trying to process it. 62 records, not 6, not 16, 62 separate WNBA records shattered by one player in one rookie season. Most rookies spend their first year just trying to figure out the speed of the professional game. Clark spent hers turning the record book into a personal checklist and crossing off entries like it was a grocery run. Points, assists, logo threes, viewership numbers. She didn't just enter the conversation, she burned the old conversation down and built a new one from the ashes. And here's what makes this story bigger than basketball. The fans showed up, the cameras showed up, the money showed up. But not everyone is celebrating, because when one person rewrites the rules this fast, the people who spent decades playing by the old rules tend to get very, very uncomfortable. What's happening behind the scenes right now, in locker rooms, in front offices, in the quiet corners of this league, is a power struggle that most people aren't even aware of, and it's only getting more intense with every record that falls. But before we get to the darkness, let's talk about the moment that made it all impossible to ignore. There are loud crowds, and then there are Caitlin Clark crowds. If you've never seen the difference, let me paint the picture for you. Arena officials had their headsets on, the standard pre-game procedures were running, everything was normal, right up until the moment the announcer called out number 22, and then the building didn't cheer, it detonated. The noise level that erupted when Clark walked out of that tunnel wasn't just impressive, it was physically disorienting. We're talking about decibel readings that rival a commercial jet engine running at full thrust from the front row of the bleachers. Arena staff were scrambling, broadcast technicians were watching their audio monitors clip into the red and stay there because the microphones they were using simply were not engineered to handle that volume of human sound. Opposing players on the court were seen physically covering their ears during warm-ups. That's not a crowd, that's a force of nature wearing team colors. And here's the part that matters beyond the spectacle. That reaction wasn't manufactured. Nobody told those fans to show up and lose their minds. They came because they wanted to. They came because Caitlin Clark represents something they've been waiting for. A player so undeniably must-watch that skipping a game feels like missing a historical event. The arena knew it, the broadcast team knew it, and most importantly, the rest of the WNBA knew it too. What that entrance signaled wasn't just fan enthusiasm, it was a declaration. The fans were sending a message to every player, every coach, and every executive in that building. The landscape has shifted. There's a new center of gravity in this league, and her name is on the back of a Fever jersey. And that message landed very differently depending on who was receiving it. Because while the fans were setting off what might as well have been a sonic alarm, somewhere in the building, someone was watching with a very different expression on their face. But we'll get to that. Let's talk about the basketball itself for a second, because the noise and the ratings and the cultural conversation are all real, but none of it exists without the actual game she's playing. And what she's doing on the hardwood right now is the kind of stuff that makes veteran analysts stop mid-sentence and just stare at the screen.
Caitlin Clark sees the floor differently than other players. It's not a matter of athleticism or even basketball IQ in the traditional sense. It's something closer to a perceptual advantage. She processes what's happening on the court in a way that makes everyone else look like they're operating one beat behind. When she threads a pass through 3 defenders, it's not luck. By the time she releases the ball, she already knows exactly where everybody in that lane is going to be a half second later. She's playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers, and she's doing it at full speed. The logo threes are the part that gets the most attention, and for good reason. Pulling up from 30+ feet with a release so fast and a trajectory so clean that it makes defenders physically flinch, that's not just confidence. That requires a level of mechanical precision that most professional players spend entire careers trying to develop and never fully reach. Clark does it casually. She does it in traffic. She does it in the fourth quarter with the game on the line and the entire building holding its breath. In one recent game, she went off for 17 points in the third quarter alone, not for the game, for one quarter. And then in the fourth, she switched gears entirely, dropping 3 consecutive assists down the stretch while her team was closing out a win. That's the part that doesn't get talked about enough. She's not just a scorer, she's a playmaker who can shift modes mid-game, reading exactly what the moment needs and delivering it. Coaches spend years trying to develop that kind of situational awareness in players. Clark came in with it pre-installed. The opposing coach after that game, still visibly frustrated, pointed specifically to the fourth quarter breakdown. His team had hung around for 3 quarters, stayed competitive, kept the game close, and then, as he put it, Clark's team just laid it on them. They played more physical, they wanted it more. Coming from a professional coach in a post-game press conference, that's not a throwaway line. That's an admission that his entire game plan got dismantled in real time, and he didn't have an answer for it. Paige Bueckers, standing nearby, had the look of someone who had just watched something they couldn't quite explain and weren't happy about it. More on her in a minute. Here's where the story stops being just about basketball and starts being about something much bigger. Because what Caitlin Clark is doing to television ratings right now is the kind of thing that changes the economics of an entire sport. ESPN delivered its second most watched WNBA game ever. Not for that week, ever. And then the following week, they delivered the second most watched WNBA game ever again, back-to-back weeks. The Indiana Fever versus Chicago Sky matchup on ABC polled 2.6 million viewers, a number that was up 79% compared to the prior year's ABC regular season average. 79% in 1 year. That's not growth, that's an explosion. To put that in context, through 22 games into the season, WNBA coverage on ESPN networks was averaging 1.3 million viewers, which itself was up 5% over the year before. That's the league average. Caitlin Clark's games were pulling numbers that doubled that average. She wasn't contributing to the ratings increase. She was almost entirely responsible for it. Take her out of the equation, and the numbers look completely different. The network executives know this, the league office knows this, and the players who have been in this league for years, working hard, putting in the time, building their careers without anywhere near this level of attention, definitely know this. That creates a complicated dynamic, because on one hand, a rising tide should lift all boats. More eyeballs on the WNBA means more money, more sponsorships, more opportunities for everyone in the league, in theory. But human nature doesn't always follow economic theory, and when one rookie walks in and immediately dominates every conversation, every highlight reel, and every ratings report, the veterans who built this league don't always respond with gratitude. The television numbers are so significant that network executives are reportedly scrambling to figure out how to maximize the airtime around her games. The infrastructure wasn't built for this level of demand. The broadcast teams weren't staffed for it. The analytics systems weren't designed to process what she's generating. Analysts on ESPN have been caught mid-broadcast, reaching for words that simply don't exist yet because the vocabulary for what she's doing hasn't been invented. That's where we are right now.
And the MVP race, which was supposed to be a competition, has essentially been converted into a formality. On paper, the MVP conversation has 3 names in it right now: A'ja Wilson, Caitlin Clark, Olivia Miles. The betting odds have those 3 at the top, and the discourse around the award has been loud and occasionally heated. But when you get past the noise and look at the actual numbers, one data point keeps cutting through everything else. Caitlin Clark is first in the entire league in points created, not second, first. And points created isn't just a scoring stat. It accounts for points generated through both scoring and assists combined. It measures total offensive impact. When you're leading the entire league in that category as a rookie, in a league full of veterans who have been playing professionally for years, the conversation about whether you deserve MVP consideration isn't really a conversation, it's a verdict. The stat that specifically silenced a lot of critics was the points per game created figure. Clark was sitting at 40 per game when you factor in her scoring and her playmaking together. That number doesn't just lead the league, it dominates it.
There are veteran guards in this league who have been building their case for MVP recognition for multiple seasons, and they're not touching that number. What makes the MVP story more interesting is the institutional side of it. Last season, the Indiana Fever ran a full-scale MVP campaign for Kelsey Mitchell. We're talking shirts, promotional material, visible organizational commitment to getting their player the recognition she deserved. They leaned into it publicly and loudly. The question being asked now is whether they'll do the same for Clark, because if the numbers justify it for anyone in recent memory, they justify it for her. Meanwhile, the Las Vegas Aces are already pushing A'ja Wilson's case. Minnesota Lynx are out front with Olivia Miles. The organizational machinery around MVP campaigns is running at full speed for multiple candidates. Whether the Fever match that energy for their own franchise player is going to be a storyline worth watching as the season progresses. But there's someone who very much does not want to see Caitlin Clark holding that trophy at the end of the year, and her opposition to Clark's success goes well beyond rooting for a different player. Here's where the story gets uncomfortable, because everything we've talked about so far, the records, the ratings, the MVP case, the arena going insane every time she breathes, all of that has produced a very specific reaction in certain corners of the WNBA world, and that reaction isn't celebration. It isn't even neutral acknowledgement. It's something much uglier. Reports and sources close to the situation have been indicating for weeks now that there is genuine, deep-seated resentment building around Clark's dominance, and that Stephanie White is at the center of it. Now, to be clear, what's being described here is based on reports and locker room whispers that have been circulating in basketball circles. Nothing has been officially confirmed, but the pattern of behavior and the consistency of what's being said from multiple directions paints a picture that's hard to dismiss. According to sources, White is not handling the Caitlin Clark era well. The claim being made, and again, this is being reported as sourced speculation, not confirmed fact, is that White represents a faction of the old guard that feels genuinely threatened by what Clark has done in one rookie season. The argument goes something like this. Clark walked into a league that these veterans spent years building, took one look at the record book, and started crossing things out. And instead of being welcomed as the savior the sport needed, she's being viewed by certain people in the establishment as an intruder who made everything that came before her look small.
If the reports are accurate, White doesn't want to see Clark break records 63, 64, or 65. She doesn't want to see the MVP narrative consolidate around a first-year player, and the whispers suggest she'd rather see Clark hit a wall, struggle, stumble, give the critics something to point to, than continue ascending at the pace she's been going. That's a strong claim, and it should be treated as exactly what it is, reported speculation from people close to the situation. But when multiple sources are telling the same story from different angles, it tends to mean something. What's undeniable, regardless of what White is or isn't thinking privately, is the broader cultural dynamic it represents. There is a segment of the WNBA establishment that is struggling with the Clark effect. Players who worked incredibly hard for years to push the league forward, to grow the fan base, to earn legitimate recognition, and then watching a rookie walk in and generate more attention in one season than the entire league generated in several years combined. That's a complicated thing to sit with. It doesn't make the resentment justified, but it makes it human. The problem for that faction is that their resistance to Clark's success is actively working against the thing they claim to care about, growing the sport. Because the audience Clark is bringing in isn't leaving when the game ends. Those 2.6 million viewers aren't one-time visitors. They're becoming fans of women's basketball in a way the league has never seen before. The old guard's jealousy, if the reports are accurate, isn't just petty, it's strategically self-defeating. And Clark, for her part, appears completely unbothered. Every time a new wave of criticism or shade gets thrown her direction, she responds the same way, by stepping back from 35 feet and draining another 3, while another broadcast record falls in the background. Stephanie White isn't the only one sitting with complicated feelings about what Clark is doing to this league.
After the game, where Clark's Fever dismantled the opposition in the fourth quarter, Paige Bueckers stepped to the microphone for the post-game press conference and said something worth paying close attention to. Bueckers acknowledged that her team had been competitive for most of the game, that they'd fought, that they'd been in it. And then she said, with a visible edge in her voice, that in the fourth quarter, the Fever just laid it on them, that they played more physical, that they wanted it more, and then she called that unacceptable. On the surface, that reads like standard post-loss accountability talk, a competitive player being hard on herself and her team after a disappointing performance. But the subtext is more interesting than that, because what Bueckers was really describing is the experience of playing against a team that has figured something out that others haven't yet, and not having an answer for it when it matters most. The fourth quarter has become Clark's playground. It's when she shifts gears, locks in, and starts making the game look effortless in a way that systematically breaks the spirits of opposing teams. Bueckers is an exceptional player. She came into this league with enormous expectations of her own, and she's more than capable of backing them up. But right now, she's navigating the same reality that every other talented player in this league is navigating, figuring out how to exist in the same space as someone who has immediately become the center of everything. That's a psychological challenge as much as a basketball one. And the frustration in her voice after that game suggested she hasn't fully worked it out yet. The opposing coach was in a similar position. His post-game assessment kept circling back to the fourth quarter, the rim protection, the physicality, the moments where his team's game plan simply stopped working. He talked about the adjustments they'd need going into the next game, the different defensive sets, the things they had to tighten up. What he didn't say, what nobody on the losing side tends to say out loud, is that sometimes the adjustment isn't tactical. Sometimes the player you're trying to contain is just operating at a level where your tactics aren't the limiting factor, your ceiling is. While all of this is playing out on the court and in the locker rooms and in the tense quiet of front office conversations, the world outside basketball is registering Clark's impact in a completely different way. And nothing illustrated that quite like the NBA 2K27 announcement.
Clark was named the cover athlete for the deluxe edition of NBA 2K27. Let that sit for a second. The 2K cover has been one of the most recognizable honors in sports gaming for decades. Kids grow up staring at that cover. They debate it with their friends. They remember who was on it the year they got the game for their birthday. It is cultural real estate in the truest sense. And now a WNBA player, a rookie, is on it. She shares the spotlight with Victor Wembanyama on the Standard Edition and Derrick Rose on the Ultra Edition, honoring his legacy. That's the company she's keeping. That's the tier the gaming world has decided she belongs in. And when you think about the reach of that, the millions of kids who will see her face on that cover, who will play as her in the game, who will grow up with Caitlin Clark as a reference point for what a basketball player looks like, the cultural impact goes well beyond anything a highlight reel can capture. Clark's reaction when she found out was characteristically grounded. She described it as pretty cool and pretty surreal. She talked about growing up watching to see who'd be on the next 2K cover and never imagining it would be her. And then she said something that reframed the whole moment, that she hoped it could show young girls what they might be able to achieve one day. That's the part that matters most, not the honor itself, but what it signals to the next generation watching. She also mentioned her connection to Rose, that she first met him at a basketball tournament when she was in 7th grade, and talked about Wembanyama as one of her favorite NBA players, noting that he once gave her a game-worn signed jersey that she still treasures. These aren't the talking points of someone performing for the cameras. They're the details of a person who grew up genuinely loving basketball and now finds herself standing at the center of it in a way she's still processing in real time. The 2K cover lands differently when you understand the full picture. It's not just an endorsement, it's a signal from the broader sports world that what's happening with Clark is permanent. The game recognized it, the fans recognized it, the ratings confirmed it. The only people who seem determined not to recognize it are the ones whose sense of relevance depends on the world staying the way it was before she showed up. Let's come back to that number one more time, 62. because it's easy to say it and move on, but it's worth actually sitting with what it means. Every single one of those 62 records existed for a reason. They were set by real players who had real careers, who worked for years to achieve something that would outlast their time in the league. Records are the way a sport remembers that something exceptional happened. They're the proof that a moment mattered. And Clark has broken 62 of them in one season. Not approached them, not challenged them late in the year, shattered them. And in most cases, she didn't just barely clear the bar. She cleared it by a margin that suggests the next person to challenge her records is going to have a very difficult time. What the 62 records collectively prove is that this isn't a hot streak. It's not a player getting lucky in a few specific statistical categories. When you break records across points, assists, viewership, arena attendance, broadcast numbers, shooting distance, and playmaking metrics all in the same season, you're not getting lucky. You're systematically operating above the level this league has ever seen before. That's a different thing. That's not great rookie season. That's a recalibration of what the ceiling looks like. And here's the part that should concern everyone who isn't rooting for her. She's a rookie. This is her first year. The physical and mental adjustments that every player has to make coming into the professional game, the increased speed, the tactical complexity, the travel schedule, the media demands, and the target on your back from day one. Clark has been dealing with all of that simultaneously, and she's still breaking records at a pace the league has never seen. What does year 2 look like? What does year 5 look like? The people in the old guard who are quietly hoping she hits a wall might want to consider what happens if she doesn't. Here's the truth that nobody in the business of denying Caitlin Clark's impact wants to say out loud. The WNBA has a before and an after now. Before Clark, the NBA was growing, slowly, steadily, with genuine momentum building through players like A'ja Wilson, Breanna Stewart, Sabrina Ionescu, and others who put in years of work to build the audience. That work mattered. It laid the foundation for what's happening now. And Clark walked through the door they opened and immediately set the building on fire, in the best possible way.
The 2.6 million viewers who tuned in to watch Indiana versus Chicago didn't all show up because they were already WNBA fans. Many of them were new. They came because of Clark. And now they've seen what the league looks like. They've seen the level of play, the competition, the stories, the other incredible athletes sharing the court with her. Some of them are going to stick around. Some of them are going to become genuine fans of the sport, not just of one player. That's how sports grow. That's how leagues build sustainable audiences that outlast any single star. Stephanie White and the faction of the old guard that reportedly resents Clark's impact aren't just being petty. They're being strategically short-sighted. Because the rising tide that Clark is generating, the ratings, the attendance, the cultural visibility, the 2K covers, all of that benefits every player in this league. The sponsorship dollars that come in because Clark's games are must-watch television don't just go to Clark, they circulate through the entire ecosystem. When the league gets richer, the players get paid better. When the league gets more visible, more girls grow up wanting to play professional basketball. This is how it works. But human beings aren't always rational about things that feel like threats to their sense of place. And for veterans who spent years working to build something that never got quite this much attention, watching a rookie immediately become the face of everything they built, that's genuinely hard. It doesn't make the resentment reasonable, but it makes it understandable. What's not understandable is actively working against a player whose success is good for the whole enterprise. If the reports about White's attitude are accurate, and again, we're talking about sourced speculation, not confirmed reporting, then what she's doing isn't protecting the old guard, it's undermining the future. And the future doesn't seem particularly concerned. There's a moment in every transformational athlete's career where the question stops being, is this person as good as advertised, and becomes, how do we even measure this? Michael Jordan had it. LeBron had it. In women's basketball, Diana Taurasi had it. And now, in the middle of her rookie season, Caitlin Clark has reached it.
The ESPN analysts who have been covering basketball for decades are genuinely struggling to find the right language. The stats don't fit neatly into existing frameworks because the existing frameworks weren't built to account for someone doing what she's doing. The broadcast equipment in her arenas clips and distorts because the volume of human reaction she generates exceeds what the gear was designed for. The record book keeps getting rewritten because the records were set in an era that didn't anticipate someone arriving with her particular combination of skill, playmaking, shooting range, and audience magnetism. And through it all, the broken records, the shattered decibel meters, the panicking executives, the jealous old guard, the frustrated opponents in post-game press conferences, Clark just keeps playing. She steps into the logo. She reads the fourth quarter like a chess endgame. She finds the open teammate on the weak side when everyone in the building knows she's looking to score, and she breaks another record that somebody spent years setting. The haters want her to slow down. They want the rookie wall to show up. They want a bad shooting night or a bad run of games to give them something to point at. But Clark's track record so far suggests the wall isn't coming. She feeds off the pressure. The bigger the moment, the cleaner her decisions get. The louder the crowd, the more dangerous her game becomes. The more people actively want her to fail, the more thoroughly she succeeds. That's not something you can scheme against. That's not a tactical problem you can solve with better rim protection or a smarter defensive scheme. That's a mentality. And it's the same mentality that turns great players into legendary ones.
We're going to look back on this season the way sports fans look back on any moment that changed the trajectory of a sport. The way people talk about the first time they saw someone do something that made them realize the game would never be the same again. This is one of those moments, and we're living inside it right now. 62 records in a single rookie season. Television ratings that broke systems designed to track television ratings. Arena crowds so loud that professional broadcast equipment failed to contain the sound. A 2K cover that puts a first-year WNBA player alongside the game's biggest names. An MVP case built on leading the entire league in points created. And somewhere in the background, a faction of the old guard scrambling to make sense of a world where their authority over what the league looks like has been quietly, completely, and irreversibly taken from them. Caitlin Clark didn't ask for permission to rewrite the rules. She didn't wait for the establishment to validate her or hand her a spot at the table. She walked in, turned 62 records into floor sweepings, doubled the league's average viewership, and started breaking broadcast equipment with the volume of the fan base she brought with her. The Stephanie Whites of the world can watch from the sidelines. They can whisper in locker rooms. They can quietly root for the rookie wall that isn't coming. But they cannot stop what's already in motion. The league has changed, the records have fallen, the ratings have arrived, and the most genuinely terrifying thing for anyone who needs this story to end differently? She's just getting started. The real question isn't whether Clark finishes this season as MVP. The real question is how many more record books need to be rewritten before people stop being surprised that she's the one holding the pen. Think about that. Because in 10 years, when analysts are looking back at the moment women's basketball crossed into permanent mainstream relevance, they're going to point to this season. They're going to point to these 62 records. They're going to point to 2.6 million viewers on a Tuesday night and a crowd so loud the microphones gave up. And Stephanie White is going to have to explain what exactly she was so angry about. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What's the most jaw-dropping thing you've seen Clark do this season? And do you think the old guard will ever come around, or is the resentment only going to deepen as the records keep falling? Hit the like button, subscribe, and stay locked in. This story is far from over.